session on after following Mike Schmidt's talk yesterday, Father Mike Schmidt. That was phenomenal. So I'm really, I gotta say, I'm really appreciative and impressed that Karla came up to me early on and said she wanted to share some of her experiences and some of her story. And so I really have a lot of respect and admiration for the courage it takes to do that. So guys, without further ado, please welcome your fellow instructor, Karla.
Okay, well, this is a little weird, like being in front of people that know me. It'd be so much easier if you were all strangers, but yeah, so when it came up during planning for Bible study, someone mentioned they wanted to discuss this topic, and I was initially just gonna keep quiet, not say anything about it, but it didn't seem like that's the path that I should take. So after some prayer and some discerning, I approached Chris, and well, he's letting me do this, so this is, yes, okay. So obviously, my name's Karla. I'm 21. I love coffee. The beach is really fun. Long walks on the beach, reading poetry, writing poetry. It's really fun. And when I was 12-ish, 13, I started struggling with same-sex attraction. I grew up in the church. My family has been Catholic for who knows how many generations. And it was weird maneuvering public school with that. I remember I really liked the church. I liked serving in the church. I liked being in the choir and being there. And it felt so comfortable up until the point when I got to middle school, and suddenly people around me were questioning this thing that I had never even thought about before, and that made me question the thing that I had never thought about before, because that's kind of how it works. If someone tells you that you should be questioning something and you need to figure it out, you usually do. So I did, and that led me to the conclusion that I was bisexual. So when I was 14, I think I told my best friend at the time, still know him, still love him to death. So I came out to him, and it was oddly invigorating to have him just not only accept it but celebrate it. And that's kind of, it made me feel like I was doing the right thing. Having that being celebrated as something unique and special and beautiful, that made it seem like it was the right thing. So then that just made it more real to me. So it was not a confusion anymore. I was yes, I enjoy this attention, I like this person accepting me and celebrating me, this is something that I want to keep having in my life. So I was to use the term that is used in culture, I came out of the closet in my school, and it was most of the same reception. I mean, I think you guys have figured out by now I'm a pretty artsy person. So I love theater, I love painting, I love singing, and that, especially that area of society, the arts, is very much so encouraging to, it is encouraged to be different and to be open and to be constantly questioning yourself and pushing the limits and the boundaries, even as far as your personality. So that was really tough to fight against, and I just couldn't do it. I just went with it. And then when I was, at that point I was still coming to Mass but I wasn't feeling super comfortable anymore because the perception that I had was that I did not, like I was not okay, like there was something broken and there was something wrong and there was something disgusting and ugly that I just like did not belong here. So like that started pushing me away, and I stopped liking coming to Mass, and I stopped helping, and I was just really, I remember just being really angry because I just didn't want to come. Like I didn't want to feel out of place. Like I had already felt out of place for so long, I didn't want to keep feeling that. So I just like didn't want to come to church anymore. But my parents still tried to make me. They still didn't know. So when I was 15, I remember I wrote them a letter because I was too scared to say it in person. So I remember like I went to my room and I sat there with a pen and a piece of paper, and I had to write it twice because the first one, the ink just smeared because I was crying so much. So I had to rewrite it, and then I went out to the living room and I handed the letter to my mom, and I went back to my room and I just kept crying because I was expecting that because they were Catholic and they were like living their faith, that they were just gonna reject me and they were just gonna not love me anymore and they were just gonna push me away. And that's not what happened. I remember they came to my room, they asked if it was like a joke, they saw me crying and they like figured it wasn't, and then just hugged me, which was really weird for me because that's like the last thing that I was expecting. But they just hugged me, and somehow that made it worse because I, in a way, like I wanted that struggle to like have my family hate me because it seemed more authentic to the experience. But they didn't. But that didn't change the fact that I felt judged by everyone else. So I still didn't like coming to church, and we started having a lot of arguments, a lot of fights. Sundays like became a like WrestleMania at the house with yelling because I didn't want to go, so I didn't want to get ready. So like finally, like that became too much, and my parents didn't want to have to like keep fighting with me, and they didn't want to keep like making me cry and hurting me. So I finally yelled so much they let me stay home. So at 15, I just like stopped coming to church. I had stopped believing in the teachings of the church like way before that, but that's when I actually stopped. And I think that's when I like really started to get lost. When I just like really slipped and just it kind of like got really dark. But it was weird because it was dark, but everyone around me, for the most part, also like identified as something. Like they were either like lesbian or gay or queer or transgender or whatever. So we were like all in this darkness together. And it's a weird thing because it's almost like brings you closer, like being so alone, kind of like that song Alone Together, like that's kind of what we were alone together. And we thought that we were the only people that could possibly understand each other because we were also going through it. So that like brings you really close to those people. And it pushes you farther away from institutions that you perceive as being hateful towards you, that you perceive as not wanting you. And like that's how I started perceiving the Catholic Church. I perceived it as an institution that just like would rather not have me there and would rather me just like disappear or go away or just not exist because there was something wrong with me. And that's really hard dealing with like my parents because they obviously like they didn't leave the church. So it was weird for me like having that relationship with them. It And like I knew that they were not okay with my life. But somehow they still loved me. It's just really confusing to me because part of me just wanted them to hate me so then there wouldn't be that confusion and it could just be like clear, like yes, the Catholic Church is bad. So that was like middle school, and then high school I got really into activism because like a part of me has just always really loved helping people and being outspoken about things that matter and kind of going against the current. So I got really into activism, and in my high school, I went to Jameswood High School, by the way. So it's kind of not like super open. It's pretty, well, it's Jameswood. And I tried to start a GSA club, which is a Gay Straight Alliance. And I'm pretty sure by the end the principal hated me because I was at his office like almost every week arguing about something. Like either they tore down posters or like they wouldn't let us on the announcements or they like canceled something or censored something else. And I think that's just always kind of been like my personality, like not just taking things, like I will go out and do it. And in my mind at that time, like that was a worthy cause and I was doing the right thing. And it becomes very empowering to fight for something when the whole world is fighting against you. It's addictive in a way. It's addictive to think that the world hates you and that you're fighting against it. And it almost makes you feel special. And you're miserable and you're not happy. And you kind of know you're never gonna be happy, but you almost accept it, like just for that rush. And I think that like a better way to explain it is reading you guys a poem that I wrote for a very different audience and a very different venue. 3 years ago, also during June, because June is Pride Month outside in the world, as I'm sure you've noticed by the multitude of flags that are like now hanging around. So I think me from 3 years ago is gonna be much better at explaining herself than I am at explaining her. So I'll read that to you guys. Okay, I wrote this for Pride Month in 2017, and I read it at Hideaway Cafe, which is like the safe space cafe in downtown Winchester. They were having an open mic for Pride, so it's kind of a slam poem, so it's a little aggressive, it's like a warning. But this is this is me 3 years ago. Someone stole my pride, turned my identity and turned it into a curse word, turned my love into a sin, turned my voice into less than a whisper, turned me into less than a person. When I hear slurs, when I'm made to feel less, I don't talk back. I was taught that this is my fault. I was taught to stay in the dark, taught to hate who I am, struggled with acceptance, pretending to be who I'm not. Laid awake at night, too afraid to even whisper what I knew I was, all those nights thinking maybe they were right. That it was a sickness and I could be cured if I tried hard enough, praying it was just a phase and I'd wake up the next day and be normal like everyone else. Maybe if I ignore them, their poisoned words won't kill me, but they force feed me their hate. Take my pain and use it as inspiration for their jokes. I don't let them see how much it hurts. When they search for tears in my eyes, I look away, and when they shove their intolerance in my face, I make them think I don't care. This is something I must learn to live with. They say I've made my choice, and this is a price I must pay for loving who I love. This is a price I must pay for not being like them. This is a price I must pay for not fitting their perfect mold. I felt safer in the dark, hiding behind a lie as a shame for loving someone ate away my pride. But it feels so much better not having to act like someone I'm not. Our pain is disregarded, our rights stripped away. We're judged based on a label, but it's not a choice we made. You'll never know how it feels, and you can't tell us it's not real. And I'm tired of the slurs, tired of feeling scared when I walk down the street, tired of having to fight for my human rights and having to prove my love is real, of the dirty looks and the hateful jokes, of kids being kicked out of their homes, of hate crimes and injustice, of being told to stay in the dark if I want to be safe, of keeping my head down and trying to blend into the background in hopes that they won't see me, in hopes that they won't hurt me. I'm tired of being told to reject who I am because it doesn't fall under your definition of normal. I will no longer feel shame, and I will no longer apologize for who I love. I can't be less than myself. I am not yours to fix. I'm not yours to judge. I'm not yours to label. I am not yours to victimize. I am me, and I am free, and as long as there is air in my lungs, I will shout, "This is me, and I am proud." And I will not conform to your standards, because this is who I am, and you will never change me. So that is very much so how I felt at that time. And I think after I read it, it was pretty clear that most people around me at that point, who were mostly within that group, felt the same way. And it is just a lot of anger, and it's I don't know, it's just anger. And a lot of that anger was kind of directed towards my mom, because I just couldn't understand why she was so darn happy and so at peace, and just like everything could be falling apart and she was fine. Meanwhile, like I thought that I was the one who was like liberated, and I was the one who was like free from all of like the oppressive church rules, and I was the one who was like right and had the answers, and I was a mess. And I was just so unstable, and she wasn't. And in a way, like it's true, like that last line, "and you will never change me," like no one changed me. No one person changed me. My conversion was really weird because I kind of just like plunged right back into the church from that. I was having an argument with my mother, like usual. She was being very kind and standing up for her faith, even though I was like tearing her arguments apart. She didn't always have answers, but she never backed down either, which was also really weird to me because I always like needed to have proof of my opinion, and she didn't. So it was just one of those arguments where I was kind of just tearing her down, and she like finally stopped, and she just like turned to me and she was like, "You know what? I can't change you. Like, I wish I could go into your mind and like make everything better and make you be happy and like make you understand why I do all of this and make you see that God is real and he does love you, but I can't." And then she went on to say, "But there is someone who can, and I believe in him, and you received him in your baptism. And I believe that one day he's gonna be the one who brings you back." So I was like, "Oh, whatever, like, we're crazy," and walked out to like go back to my room. I should have mentioned this was on a Sunday and she was getting ready for Mass. I turned around and like started walking back to my room. I think I got to like the kitchen maybe, and I just like stopped. And for like a split second, I felt peace, which I hadn't felt in like the past 6 years. And I just turned around and I went back to her and I was like, hey, I'm thinking about going to church with you today. And that was after 6 years of not stepping foot at Sacred Heart. And she didn't miss a beat. She immediately just like grabbed my hand, was like, well, what are you waiting for? Pulled me to my room, like pulled out a skirt and a shirt, and she was like, here, put this on. And I didn't even have time to think about what I was doing. So I did, I just like got dressed. I think it was like 30 minutes before we had to leave. I like quickly brushed my hair, like jumped in the car. And I came back. I had green hair at the time and a nose piercing. And I had the sides of my head shaved. And I don't know why, like I still like to this day, like I don't know why. Like at that point and at that time, like that's when I just like got pulled back. Like no chance to even think about it. So I came back and that was November, it was like the 3rd week in November 2018. And we came to church, and for the next 3 weeks I came back, and on the 4th week I went to confession for the first time, and I just remember the priest saying to me, like, no, this is where you belong. Like, it doesn't matter everything that you've done, like everything you just told me, like, no, this is where you belong. And I just broke down crying. Because I had not felt, even working at Hideaway, which, by the way, I worked at Hideaway for like a year and a half. Not even there did I ever really feel like I belonged. So it was just really heartbreaking in a way. And I just kept remembering that Fulton Sheen quote where he just says, like, sometimes the good Lord has to break the heart of someone to get in. He definitely broke my heart. And it was really weird coming back in because my identity, all of my identity, fell back on me being bisexual. Like, no part of my being was outside of that. Like, my poetry, my painting, my activism, my friends, my support system, it all surrounded that one aspect of myself, which is like nothing but trivial. So coming back in kind of meant I had to tear myself apart and just leave everything behind. And that was really hard. I lost so many people in that process, people who I still love dearly, and I still pray for them constantly. Just because I had to figure out who I was, because I kind of lost who I was, who I thought I was. All of that was gone. And at that point, I kind of realized Catholicism is like pretty radical. In the best of ways. There's like no in between. Like, you're either all in or you're all out. And I didn't want to be out because I already knew everything the world had. I already knew everything it could offer, and it all made me feel like crap. And I didn't want to let go of that peace. I didn't want to let go of that love that I felt for the first time. And that made me realize that it wasn't about the people, that it wasn't about everyone else, that they could judge me if they wanted to, or look down, like it didn't matter because I was still loved by God. And that was really hard to like realize and accept, because even coming back, I still felt broken somehow. but I did it anyway. And that was a year and a half ago, and it's so weird to me, even now, like talking about it, because it feels like two completely separate people. And like, I know it's not, like it's still me, but it doesn't seem the same. I still write, I still draw, I still enjoy it, but it's different now, I think, in some way. I feel like now it has meaning, which is something that my life didn't have before. I guess this is all to say that there's no limit to God's mercy. And sometimes it like comes in the most unexpected of ways. And he just like drags people back in when he wants to. And he flips your life upside down and tears everything down and helps you rebuild. And it's also to say that I think we need to do a better job at not, we need to do a better job at reaching out, because I don't think I ever had or ran into anyone besides my mom, who was Catholic and was willing to even say hi. I think sometimes that's just reaffirmed my belief that I was not wanted here. I think we need to do a better job at inviting people who are away back in and letting them know that, like Father Mike Schmidt said, they do belong. Because that's the best way to love someone. And I have also learned that Catholicism is about love. And if you're not doing it for love, it becomes really hard to do it. Because evangelizing is hard. Most people don't want that. And I know because I didn't want it. But if you get close enough to a person and interest yourself in that person, eventually maybe they'll ask questions. I didn't lose everyone. I still have one friend who is gay, and I have another friend who identifies as being transgender. It was really difficult at first figuring out that relationship, because I didn't know how to let them know that I love them so deeply without agreeing with everything they were doing. Like, that was really tough. And I've had to say no to some things. And it hurts to have to say no to someone you love and see the disappointment in their face and see that you hurt them, but somehow I still let them know I love them. And every chance I get, I try to talk to them about how great being back in the church is and how amazing it is to be so happy. And I try to be upbeat and positive and everything that I couldn't be before, because I didn't have God in my life. And I try to just bring some light to them, because I know how dark it is to be away, and how scary it is to be in that darkness and to feel like there's no hope or exit sign or light at the end of the tunnel. So I just tried really hard to be that light for them, like my mom was to me. Because I know for a fact that it was in great part my mom's light that attracted me back towards Christ. And even though God could do it on his own if he wanted to, he chooses to let us be a part of his plan. And he chooses to let us take some part in helping bring souls back to him. And one thing that my mom says all the time is, God's going to do what he's going to do anyway, with or without you. But I would rather it be with me. And by virtue of our baptism, we are called to evangelize. We are called to be that light in the world, to go out and bring Christ to the people who are farthest away. I just think it's so important that we start doing that, that we start bringing some light into the darkness, especially as young, energetic people. I think it's just so important to be happy and to bring that joy to the people who need it most, so that they can see there is another way and there is another path, and it doesn't have to be mediocre, and it doesn't have to be sad, and it doesn't have to be dark. That there is a way to be happy, even in the messes that are around us, even in the crappiest of situations or the hardest of decisions, there is a way to be happy. Because I didn't know that, not really. And it was only through my mom that I was able to see that, and I was able to question myself and what I was doing and my beliefs, and I was then able to come back and open my heart and let God fix what needed to be fixed and mend what needed to be mended and forgive everything that needed and needs to be forgiven. But it's really hard, I think, especially because so much of that hurt, so much of, I guess when you're far away, so much of your person and your being relies on all of the things that you're doing that are hurting you. And it's hard to realize that you need to change and that you're wrong, and be humble enough to realize that. That was probably the hardest thing for me, realizing that I was wrong in all of my convictions. So yeah, I guess that's kind of what I wanted to say. Yeah, so that's me. I guess if you have any questions, I'll try to answer them. No? Okay. What? Yes.